I interviewed the owner of the largest yacht charter company in the country and learned how he secured over $1.3 million in funding in just 6 months. And I was honestly blown away, not just by the extremely high numbers, but by how strategic he was every step of the way. And here's what he pulled off. He got $200,000+ in business credit from Apple Credit Union, FNBO, Hello Alice, and City National, then $1 million+ in business lines of credit from regional banks like TD Bank, South State Bank, and First Citizens, and Security Plus. And he got a $100,000 business loan from Pursuit NYBDC. And he worked with multiple business relationship managers. So this wasn't a spray and pray strategy. He came in strategic, structured, and stacked. Now he's got $1.3 million in buying power, fuel to expand from New York into Florida, expand his business there, and a funding blueprint that works for real entrepreneurs. So what you're going to learn next is exactly how he did it so you can copy what worked. You'll see the big deposit strategy that made banks treat him like a VIP, how he told his business story to win trust and get approvals, the exact funding package he used to walk into banks fully prepared, the smart order he applied to double his credit limits, and how a secret credit bureau actually locked him out of opening accounts with several banks. Now, banks don't care what you say you're going to do. They care what you show. And this guy, he showed up like a boss. So before applying for anything, credit lines, loans, credit cards, he strategically loaded his business bank accounts with $30,000 to $100,000 in cash. And he did this because when a banker or business relationship manager, or BRM for short, when they open up your file and see, $47,000 sitting in that account, you instantly stop looking high risk to them. You start looking like a serious player, someone worth their time, someone they should bend over backwards for to help before any other bank does. You see, big deposits can cover up a lot of sins. So if you have too many inquiries, low FICO score, a thin credit file, or maybe you don't have too many docs, having a fat balance in that bank account can make all that noise just fade away. And think of it like this. If you got 5+ hard inquiries, a $50,000+ deposit can quiet that down. And if you have a FICO score stuck in the high 600s, you can show $30K in business reserves in that bank account, and suddenly you're low risk. Or maybe you have no tax returns or a limited business history. You can just drop, let's say $25K in the account and let the cash do the talking. Because at the end of the day, banks trust what they see, and what they see is your account balance here. So a strong deposit can turn a maybe into a absolute yes, even when your credit isn't perfect. And let's not sugarcoat it. When you're stacking high limit approvals, your personal credit still matters. A lot. Banks want to see that you're not just running a successful business, but that you personally know how to manage risk. So this guy didn't just walk in with a good score. He came in with a God tier personal credit profile. Here were his actual FICO scores at the time of applying. He had an Equifax of 828, a TransUnion of 847, an Experian of 850. Yeah, a perfect score there. So there was no late payments, no collections, and no high utilization. He knew if he showed up with 800+ scores across the board, there wouldn't be any questions about whether, he could handle more credit. And he also knew that there's a right and a risky way to apply for funding. So this guy, he had already learned both, the easy way and the hard way. So what he did was apply for the business credit cards first, then he circled back and hit them with a request for a line of credit. And he did this because cards are easier to approve, they're faster, less risky for the bank, and once you're in with the card, you're no longer a stranger, you're a client now. That makes it way easier to ask for the bigger stuff later. He used this exact move to pull $100,000 from Apple Credit Union, another $100K from First Citizens Bank, and a full $200K from City National Bank. And those were 3 of the most generous lenders in his entire playbook. Now, if you don't know this, most people walk into a bank with just a clothes on their back and a prayer, but not this guy. He showed up with receipts and paperwork, and not just a few. I'm talking a full-blown funding war chest ready to deploy. Before he even hit submit on a single application, he had something most people never think to prepare. A full funding package so he could send that directly to the BRM or any decision maker at the bank. And we're talking about a crisp professional folder labeled funding package plus the business name. Inside, he had everything a lender could possibly want to see. I'm talking about personal credit reports from Experian, Equifax, TransUnion, personal tax returns for the last 2 years, business tax returns for the last 2 years, business bank statements for the last 3 to 6 months, personal bank statements for the last 3 to 6 months, a profit and loss statement for the most recent year. He even threw in a corporate debt schedule and LLC formation documents like articles of organization, a voided business check, his government ID, so a driver's license or passport, and a use of funds statement. So that's like a short one-page explanation about how you want to use your funds in the business. He had proof of business address, so utility bill, a lease, things like that. Proof of personal address, so another set of utility bills, a mortgage or a lease payment. He even went a step further and had his Experian and DNB business reports. He didn't want the banker to do any work. He wanted them to forward his file straight to underwriting and say, this one's ready to go. And that's exactly what happened. This works so well because bankers aren't underwriters, but they can pitch your deal internally. So the easier that you make their job, the more they'll fight for you. He didn't just apply here. He pretty much equipped the banker to get it approved. I gotta say, most of his applications went through manual review, which would scare, off the average person, but not him because he came with everything. I'm talking everything already in place. So when underwriters had questions, he already had the answers sitting in their inbox. Now, if you're serious about high limit funding, don't just rely on your credit score. Okay. Build a funding file that tells your story. You want to be over prepared, be the applicant that makes your banker say, I wish everyone came in like this. So moving on, if you ever wonder what really moves the needle when you're applying for business credit, it's not just your score or your revenue or your docs, it's your people, specifically your business relationship manager. So with this guy, he didn't just hit apply and hope for the best. He strategically built real relationships with the people who could walk his file directly into underwriting. And it changed everything for him. No pre-approval emails, no gambling on cold online applications, no waiting on that algorithm to decide his fate. Instead, he got proactive. So before applying at the bank, he'd search their website, look for the commercial lending or business banking departments. And then he'd ask one question: can I speak with a business relationship manager or schedule a meeting with one? And then when he got the meeting, he would follow it up with even smarter questions that signaled he was serious. He wouldn't be just there for small talk. He would come there with purpose. So these questions are the ones that position him as knowledgeable and a qualified applicant and not a tire kicker. He would say things like, do you handle business credit cards and credit lines directly? Is there an internal score I should be aware of? What kind of rates and credit limits do your strongest applicants usually see? And here's the real sauce. What he'd do when he talked to them is he would lead with power. He would mention he had an 830 FICO score, big deposits ready, clean documents, and a fully prepared funding file. And bankers are just funding your credit score or your balance sheet. They're also funding your story. And this guy had his elevator pitch dialed in. He'd lead with something like, I own and operate the largest yacht charter company in the U.S. We've been in business for 8 years. I've got 800 plus FICO scores, planning to move significant deposits in and use multiple banking products and build a long-term relationship here. And that's going to be music to bankers' ears. It hits all the right notes: credibility, cash flow, and commitment. He didn't walk in saying, I need money to grow. Please help. I deserve it. He walked in saying, we're already winning, we're scaling, and there's more where this came from. That subtle shift made all the difference. He really positioned himself as someone who was already successful and already profitable, just looking for the right banking partner to scale with. And he would even take it one step further, and he would tell his BRMs that he had more clients just like him coming down the pipeline. He would say something like, I've got other business owners I'm working with. If this goes well, I'll send them your way. I think that's a powerful incentive. Suddenly he wasn't just a borrower, he was a referral source, a connector. Someone who could bring them even more wins down the line. Now let's talk about this sneaky little system that can quietly ruin your funding game plan even when your credit is perfect. It's called ChexSystems, and most people don't even know that it exists until it's too late. And you can think of ChexSystems like the credit bureau for bank accounts. It doesn't track your credit cards or loan payments, it tracks your banking behavior. So think about how many checking accounts you've opened recently, whether you ever bounced checks or had overdrafts. If you've closed accounts with negative balances, even how many banks you've applied with in a short time frame. It's really like a quiet watchdog banks use to sniff out risky behavior before they even look at your FICO scores. Now, back to my guy, even with his 830 plus FICO score and a $7+ million in revenue, he knew not to play games with ChexSystems. Some banks will just auto deny your application just because ChexSystems flags you for opening too many accounts too fast. You might never even get to speak to a BRM because their system quietly says, nope, you're too risky to even open an account. And yes, he even got hit with this too. So despite having the receipts and the funding track record and the $1 million approvals, several credit unions flat out denied him from opening an account. And that's because he had too many recent ChexSystems inquiries. It didn't even matter that he was bringing in major deposits. They didn't care about that. It didn't matter that he was a dream client. That little banking credit report still shut the door on him. No exceptions, no conversations. So take this as a serious heads up. ChexSystems can quietly kill your momentum even if you're doing everything else right. And it doesn't care about how good your credit is. It can ruin the best of us. But listen, ChexSystems mostly applies exclusively to credit unions. If you want to avoid them completely, then you can focus on nationwide and regional banks. I just tracked down the top 5 banks that will approve a new LLC without proof of income. So check out the next video here to see the top 5 banks that should be your first stop on your business credit journey and how to get access to serious capital without selling your soul to underwriting. Thank you for watching.